To believe in democracy is to understand that each of our citizens has wisdom and has a voice. And if we refuse to listen to that voice, even our most successful fights will...
Do you think our democracy is at risk in this election?
I think that it is. I always keep saying democracy is great, of course. But democracy people take for granted. It's a word that some people don't even understand. They take it for granted. It's about right and wrong, period. The guy's a monster. He is beyond wrong. It's almost like he wants to do the most horrible things that he can think of in order to get a rise out of us. I don't know what it is, but he's been doing it and doing it.
J.D. Vance never stood a chance. 1 minute, he's trying to present himself as a serious political figure, and the next, Niro is eviscerating him with the precision of a master storyteller dissecting a terrible script. Part film critic, part mob boss from a Scorsese classic.
We're in a very bad situation. I remember you and I about 5-6 years ago talking. I'm down at the Spring Studios, something about, I said, what just happened, just happened. No, it didn't happen. It's all about truth. And what we have here is a denial of truth all over the place. And even the speech that he made after is insane. It's just insane, and I'm very, very concerned about it. I think we all are.
And so one of the takeaways is not just that the Republican Party base is somehow fundamentally flawed in a way that's unique in American political history.
Vance's transformation from Trump skeptic to devoted loyalist gets ripped apart, exposing just how flimsy his political reinvention really is. We're in a really dangerous place. Niro starts, his tone heavy with frustration. I remember sitting down at Spring Studios 5-6 years ago asking, what just happened? But the truth is, it didn't just happen. It's been unfolding for years. And what we're witnessing now?
We're in a very bad situation. I remember you and I about 5-6 years ago talking. I'm down at the Spring Studios, something about, I said, what just happened, just happened. No, it didn't happen. It's all about truth. And what we have here is a denial of truth all over the place. And even the speech that he made after is insane. It's just insane, and I'm very, very concerned about it. I think we all are.
And so one of the takeaways is not just that the Republican Party base is somehow...
a complete deliberate rejection of reality? Even the speech he gave after? Just madness. Absolute madness. And I'm seriously worried. We all should be. Vance's biggest miscalculation? Assuming people wouldn't remember. He seems to think political memory is short, but unfortunately for him, the internet never forgets. His past criticisms of Trump, once delivered with conviction, as if he'd never need to grovel for Mar-a-Lago's approval, are still out there, preserved in interviews, tweets, and video clips. He called Trump a threat to democracy, unfit for office, and morally bankrupt. Now, he's doing rhetorical backflips, trying to pretend he never said any of it. At one point, he even tried to save face with a weak excuse. Kristen, I think I've learned my lesson about speaking for the president before we've actually discussed something. Nice try. But the problem isn't just that he spoke out of turn. It's that his own words are now his worst enemy.
Kristen, I think that I've learned my lesson on speaking for the president before he and I have actually talked about an issue.
He's so stupid. Look at the lame, inane things that he said. He's so stupid, he can't even say anything clever or smooth. He's a moron, but he's a scary one. And in all seriousness, and we know it here, deeply insecure. He is a malignant number.
Past statements about Trump's incompetence and recklessness stand in stark contrast to the hollow robotic defenses he delivers today. And he's really bad at this. His forced loyalty looks painfully uncomfortable, like someone trying to sell a product they don't believe in. He once called Trump a malignant narcissist, but now every interview, every tweet, every strained defense reeks of someone trying way too hard to prove his devotion. It's obvious. He knows how ridiculous he looks, but at this point, he's too far gone to turn back. His biggest complaint about Trump back in the day? My biggest issue with Trump, out of many, is that his message to the right, especially the white working class that I came from, is anti-conservative and in some ways anti-American. He tells people the deck is so stacked against them that unless he's president, their lives will never improve. That's not true. and it's self-destructive. Fast forward to now, and he's fully on board with the same rhetoric he once condemned.
My biggest problem with Trump, I mean, and there are many, many things to pick out, but my biggest problem with Trump is that his message to the right, especially the white working class of which I came from, is anti-conservative and in some ways anti-American. It's fundamentally that the deck is so stacked against you that unless I'm the president, nothing that you do will change your life's outcomes. I think it's wrong, and I think it's very self-destructive.
I mean, he's so blatantly stupid. He's a punk, he's a he's a con, a bullshit artist, a mutt who doesn't know what he's talking about, doesn't do his homework, doesn't care, thinks he's gaming society, doesn't pay his taxes. He's an idiot. Colin Powell said it best. He's a national disaster. He's an embarrassment to this country. It makes me so angry that this country has gotten to this point, that this fool, this bozo, has...
He's regurgitating Trump's talking points with desperate enthusiasm, hoping no one notices how wildly he's contradicted himself. But we notice. And so does the internet. No matter how many times he tries to rewrite his political history, the receipts are there, reminding everyone exactly who J.D. Vance was before he traded his principles for a seat at Trump's table. It's almost comical. He's a fraud, a hustler, a political shapeshifter who doesn't even bother covering his tracks. He struts around like he's gaming the system, dodging accountability, making empty promises, and hoping nobody connects the dots. But they do.
I've been able to deport about 37,600 people, which is not a small number, but to really get those numbers up, it would have to be about 60,000 a week to hit that 12 million mark. You run out of beds. You have like 47,000 people in detention, but you've run out of beds. What next?
Well, first of all, we have to do this sequentially, Laura. So what the president said on the campaign is the very first and most important thing is to secure the borders. You know, we have 20 million, maybe more illegal aliens in this country right now. We have to stop that number from growing. And by the way, in 6 weeks, we've almost accomplished complete border security. You've had places that had 1,500 illegal encounters.
Why people are not taking him seriously.
He was vicious to her.
He's vicious.
Even Colin Powell once called him a national disaster, a stain on the country. And yet, somehow, here we are, watching this shameless opportunist climb the political ladder like he actually belongs there. But let's be real, he never truly will. To hardcore MAGA diehards, he's a means to an end. To everyone else, he's just another sellout who traded dignity for a career upgrade. And Robert De Niro? Oh, he never forgets. For De Niro, this isn't just another politician bending with the wind. No, this is a full-scale Broadway production titled The Reinvention of J.D.
Guys are working hard every single day, and I think it's pretty good news, right? That as of a couple of months ago, you have an administration that's working with you and facilitating your hard work instead of making it harder to innovate, which is, I think, what the last administration did. Though, in defense of Joe Biden, he was asleep most of the time. I don't think he totally realized what he was doing, but certainly didn't make it easier. His administration did not for our innovator.
But first, do you remember Robert De Niro, the tough guy who played Raging Bull Jake LaMotta and Goodfellas wise guy Jimmy Conway, but lately has become a weeping, shrieking victim of Trump
J.D. Vance? The man who once made a name for himself by championing working-class struggles has now morphed into a hollowed-out Trump-branded action figure. And then there's immigration, the ultimate political prop. They brag about deporting 37,600 people as if it's some grand achievement. Yet to reach their absurd 12 million target, they'd need to be deporting 60,000 per week. The math alone exposes the farce. Detention centers are already overstuffed at 47,000 beds. So then what? More empty slogans, more posturing, more fear-mongering with no actual plan to back it up.
Stupid. Stupid. Silly.
It's not necessary?
No.
When you're doing this, because your adrenaline's going, you're trying not to say anything stupid. You don't actually know how it's going, really. Like, I felt pretty good about it, but my wife comes out at the very end, just as sort of like this one final, segment for the TV cameras. Gwen Waltz comes up and my wife comes up, and I look at Usha's face, and I just knew. I was like, holy shit.
Nice.
We must have done a very good job, because Usha doesn't lie to me, and her face especially doesn't lie to me, and I knew that minute that we...
Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted. And because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country. And I think most Americans are going to
not give up power.
You know he won't. You know he won't. He even said it. He's never going to give it up. And anybody who deludes themselves in thinking that he...
Vance, once a vocal critic of Trump, has now erased his past statements like a bad script rewrite. This isn't just a flip-flop, it's a full character reboot. The kind that makes you wonder if he wakes up every morning and recalibrates his entire belief system to match Trump's latest rant. And when he speaks, the shift is undeniable. Suddenly, he's singing the praises of an administration he once condemned, rewriting history to make it sound like the last one was a disaster for progress, before slipping in a jab at Biden, hoping that alone will earn him credibility.
I'm sure all of us saw there were a few protesters outside, and I can't be the only person wondering, it's a little after noon on a Friday, and don't you all have jobs? Who are the people? And I think that's one of the reasons why we've got to rebuild American manufacturing and support great companies like Vantage Plastics, because we want those people to get off the streets and back to work. It'd be good for them and it'd be good for everybody.
But De Niro isn't buying it. He spent a lifetime spotting con men, phonies, and two-bit hustlers. And now, watching politicians like Vance attempt to rewrite history in real time, he's calling out the biggest scam of all. The assumption that the public is too distracted, too exhausted, or too blindly partisan to see through the act. Because at the end of the day, a person can trash Trump in interviews, write entire books about how dangerous he is, and then, like magic, flip the script and act like they were a loyal foot soldier all along. It's almost impressive in its shamelessness, almost. But J.D. Vance isn't fooling everyone. Certainly not Robert De Niro. Because at the core of this isn't just one politician flip-flopping for survival. It's about how democracy gets steamrolled when those in power treat principles like disposable roadblocks on their climb to the top. And De Niro? He wasn't about to let that slide. This wasn't just your run-of-the-mill political backpedaling. This was elite-level, record-smashing, reality-bending hypocrisy. Vance didn't simply evolve. He exercised his entire past ideology like it was a liability. This is the same man who once warned the country that Trump was dangerous, even comparing him to a certain mustachioed dictator. Now, he nods along with the enthusiasm of a kid desperate for his stepdad's approval, clapping on cue like a trained seal. And then there's his latest excuse. Some rambling about how he didn't even realize how well he'd performed until his wife confirmed it with a look. Because apparently his entire political career is now guided by her facial expressions. But here's the thing. Trump hasn't changed. He's still churning out the same chaos, still collecting indictments like golf trophies. The only thing that has changed? J.D. Vance's ambition. Principles are nice, until they start getting in the way of a Senate seat and a potential shot at something bigger. And De Niro? He's seen this act before. There comes a point where political survival turns into something else entirely. A full-blown personality transplant. Vance, the self-proclaimed champion of working-class America, has now been reduced to standing ovations every time Trump breathes. The same man who once called Trump a danger to democracy is now angling for a spot in his inner circle, grinning like an intern hoping to fetch coffee in 2028. And the worst part? He's not even good at pretending. His transformation isn't seamless, it's clunky, awkward, and as unconvincing as a bad actor struggling through cue cards. It's like watching someone who spent their whole life hating pineapple on pizza suddenly insist it's their favorite. Except they still wince with every bite. Yet here he is, desperate to sell the world on his reinvention, praying no one remembers who he used to be, power. He's not letting that go. You know it, I know it. Hell, he knows it. Anyone still convinced otherwise is either clueless or willfully blind. And De Niro? He sees right through it. The whole world does. Because nothing exposes a fraud quite like watching them struggle to believe their own performance. And that's the real danger here. It's not just J.D. Vance's moral freefall, but what it represents. For every Vance out there, grinning through the humiliation of selling out, there's an army of others just like him, ready to trade their integrity for a shot at power. When politics turns into a competition of who can grovel the hardest, democracy doesn't just suffer. It becomes collateral damage. Because the moment politicians realize that standing for something actually takes courage, they fold. And when enough of them do, the cracks in democracy don't just form. They spread, because democracy isn't an unbreakable machine. It doesn't run on autopilot. It survives only when people actively defend it. And yet, look where we are. The so-called guardians of democracy are too busy rewriting their own beliefs in real time, twisting the system into one that rewards blind loyalty over accountability. Saying the right things in the moment has become more important than standing by the right principles. That's how the erosion starts. Not with some sudden collapse, but through a slow, steady stream of compromises, sellouts, and silence. J.D. Vance thinks people won't notice, that they'll just accept whatever version of him he's selling today. But De Niro's message was clear. We see it. And if democracy is going to survive, it'll be because people refuse to look the other way. And just like that, the internet did what it does best. Shredded whatever dignity Vance had left. Within minutes, the De Niro roast special was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Every platform was flooded with clips of De Niro eviscerating him. And the memes? Relentless. One had Vance's face slapped onto the infamous "This is fine, dog." Flames in the background captioned, "This is fine. Trump still likes me, right?" Another featured De Niro in Taxi Driver pointing aggressively with the words, "You talking to me? Oh wait, you can't. You're too busy flip-flopping." Even AI deepfakes got in on the action. One particularly brutal edit had Vance groveling like a rejected apprentice contestant, desperately seeking Trump's approval. But the real damage? That came next. Because let's be honest, Vance's transformation was never subtle. He didn't slowly warm up to Trump over time. He went from calling Trump a dangerous fraud to practically rolling out the red carpet at Mar-a-Lago. And now, thanks to De Niro, that embarrassing sellout was on full display for the world to see. Then came the infamous quote, making its way back into circulation. "Donald Trump, I was wrong. First of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border. A lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. For the first time, people started questioning whether Vance was really as untouchable as he thought. MAGA loyalists who once hyped him up suddenly sounded hesitant. Right-wing influencers who had spent months praising him started hedging their bets. Even Fox News scrambled to do damage control, running segments to downplay De Niro's takedown. But the hesitation was there. You could feel it. The cracks were forming. And this time, not even Vance's rehearsed sound bites could patch them up. MAGA voters see it too. Once upon a time, Vance called Trump a con man, compared him to Hitler, and painted himself as a principled outsider. Now, he's groveling. And Trump's base? They don't respect weakness. Sure, Vance can make the rounds on every conservative talk show, ranting about coastal elites and whining about the liberal media. But it won't erase what De Niro just put on blast. He's a fraud. And the thing about frauds? Once the mask slips, people don't forget. They don't unsee the con.